Hello, this is Eli Sheubi. We'll continue today with chapter 8 of Hilchot Shehita. We have until now spoken about some of the different types of terefot. We said that there were 8 types of terefot. We looked at the derusa, which is the one mentioned in the Torah of an animal that is attacked by a predator, and also the nekuva, an animal that has a puncture. And today we'll be beginning two types that are hasera and netula, which are kind of similar. We'll see what the difference between them is. Hasera means that something is missing of one of the organ is missing, that the animal was born without the organ, or that the organ was removed from the animal. And the netula refers to the fact that the organ was removed from the animal. But does not refer to a case in which the animal was born without that organ. We'll be looking at the various laws regarding these two, and we'll begin with the hasera, literally, which means missing, and the animal that is missing one of its organs. Okay. הלכה א', חסרה כיצד, שני איברים הן שאם חסר מניינם טרפה. What is the case of the hasera, of if it is missing an organ? There are two organs that if the animal was missing one of them in its count, meaning in the amount of that organ that it's supposed to have, that then it is considered a terefa. And these are they, and these are they, the lung and the hind legs, the hind limbs, the two back legs of the animal. So if either he is missing one of the lungs, or if he is missing one of his legs, the animal is a terefa. Okay, what do we mean by missing one of the lungs? We'll be dealing with the lungs first, and then afterwards we'll continue to the legs. 5 אונות יש לה לריאה, כשיתלה אותה אדם בידו, ופני ריאה כנגד פניו, 3 מן הימין ו2 מן השמאל. Okay, there are 5 lobes in the lung. When a person hangs the lung, or hangs the animal with his hand by its front legs, right? So if you imagine how like a butcher normally hangs the animal after he has already slaughtered the animal, right? Where he's hanging him by his legs with his head towards the ground, and his back and his legs hanging up on top, right? And then it ends up being that all the organs are upside down, right? Because the animal is flipped. So when you hang the animal like that, and such that the lung is facing us, right, that the front of the lung is facing us, then it has 3 lobes on the right and 2 lobes on the left. There's a picture down here. I'll show you in another picture. This is how the lung of a cow looks. We discussed this a little bit in the last chapter, but now we'll go a little bit more in depth about the lobes themselves. Okay, so this is the lobe of the cow as if he's standing upright. Okay, so if he's standing upright, so what we see here on the right, again, this is for the people watching the YouTube channel and looking at these pictures. What we see here on the right is considered the left lobe, right? Because what is on our right is on the cow's left, right? Because if we're looking at him, so his right is our left, and our right is his left, right? So what we see on the right here is the left lung, and what we see on the left is the right lung. The right lung has, as we discussed in the last chapter, has a cranial lobe, a middle lobe, and a caudal lobe, right? The cranial lobe on top consists of 2 parts, the cranial part and the caudal part. and then the middle lobe, which is only on the right lung and not on the left lung, and then the caudal lobe on the bottom, which is the large lobe, which Hachamim call Hare'ah, right? So we have the Hare'ah and three unot, three various smaller lobes on the top on the right lung, and two unot on the left lung, and then Hare'ah. In addition, we also have the accessory lobe, also called the intermediate lobe, in the middle, which is a smaller lobe that is also a little bit on like on the left here, right? It is on the right lung, right? And the way that we see it here is not the way that Rabbeinu is is describing it, since for this animal is upright. In the picture that Rabbeinu is explaining, the animal is flipped upside down, right? So all of this is upside down, and then what we see on our right is also the right lung, since our right the right lung is flipped upside down. Instead of being on the left part, it's on the left side, it's on the right side. If you imagine this whole picture flipped 180 degrees. And then Hare'ah is on the top, and the unot are on the bottom. And then so too, the intermediate lobe, which you see here is facing a little bit towards the left, and Rabbeinu's picture will be facing a little bit towards the right. Okay. So here we see וחמש אונות יש לה אוקיי. אוקיי. ובצד הימין ממנה כמו אוזן קטנה, ואינה בצד האונות, ויש לה כמו כיס בפני עצמה, והיא בתוך הכיס, ואוזן זו הקטנה היא הנקראת ורדה, מפני שהיא דומה לוורד, ואינה מן המניין. Okay. And on the right side, so again, on our picture was on the left, but here, and also in the way that it is in Makbili, the way that they drew it here, they also drew it as if the animal is upright, but it's on the right side, according to Rabbeinu's picture, since it's upside down, and it's on the right lung, right? So on the right side, there is like a small lobe. And it is not on the sides of the lobes, meaning it's not on the same on the same plane as the other lobes. Rather, it is it's kind of on top, right? It's towards the chest of the animal, and it has like a sac, right? In the same way that we saw that the holong sits in a sac. So and so on, and also the heart and other things, right? So this intermediate lobe also sits in a sac called the mediastinal recess, is the sac that holds the accessory lobe in the cow. And it sits in that sac. And this small lobe is what is called the varda, because it looks like a vered. It looks like a rose in its form, and is not included in the count, right? Meaning, so we said that, so the count is that there are 3 lobes on the right lung and 2 lobes on the left, and then each one also has an and if it's missing any one of that count, then it will be a terefa. The accessory lobe is not included in that count. Here's another picture that you can see how it looks more in a more realistic picture. Right, so you can see a little bit. It looks a little bit like a rose. Also, its color, right, and that's where it gets its name from. לפי כך, אם לא נמצאת הוורד מותרת, שכך היא דרכה. יש בהמות תימצא בהן, ויש בהמות לא תימצא בהן. And therefore, if the accessory lobe is not found, meaning it's missing, then the animal is still permitted. Since this is normal, that there are some animals that have an accessory lobe and some animals that do not have an accessory lobe. And not all animals have accessory lobes, and therefore, if it's missing, it's not considered to be a lung that's missing a part of it. Right? For example, humans also do not have an accessory lobe in their lung. ואם נמצאת נקובה, אף על פי שהכיס שלה סותם את הנקב, הרי זאת טרפה. But if there is a puncture in the accessory lobe, even though its sac seals the puncture, this is a terefa. So if it's missing, then it's not a problem. But if it's there, then it's treated like the whole rest of the lung, and a puncture in the accessory lobe is a puncture in the lung and makes the animal a terefa. הלכה ב' חסר מניין האונות, ונמצאת אחת מן השמאל או שתיים מן הימין, טרפה. ואם נמצאו בימין שתיים וזאת הברתה, הרי זו מותרת. If there were missing, right? If we subtracted from the count of the unot, of the lobes, such that we found that the left lung had only one lobe, or that the right lung had only two lobes instead of two and three, there is one or two, then this is a teref. But if we found that on the right lung there were only two lobes instead of three, but there was also the varda, there was also the accessory lobe, then this is permitted, since the existence of the accessory lobe is not necessary for the count. We can include the accessory lobe that we have found as if it were the third lobe, and then there are three lobes and it is permitted. הלכה ג' התחלפו האונות ונמצאו שלוש מן השמאל ושתיים מן הימין בלא ורד, או שהייתה הורד עם השלוש בצד שמאל, הרי זו טרפה, שהרי חסרה מצד ימין. If the lobes switched between the right and left lung, such that we found that the left lung had three lobes and that the right lung had only two lobes without a accessory lobe, because if it had an accessory lobe, then that would complete it to three. Or if the accessory lobe is with the three that are on the left lung, then this is a terefa, meaning so we have three on the left and the accessory lobe, right? So this would be four, and this is a terefa, since here the right lung is missing one of its lobes, right? So even if we had two on the right, and also the accessory lobe, that would be fine, since we would just include the accessory lobe to complete three. But if there were two and an accessory lobe, but the accessory lobe was to the left, then we cannot include it within the three of the right. הלכה ד' נתוספו האונות במניינם. אם הייתה האוזן היתרה בצד האונות, או מלפני הריאה, שהוא לעומת הלב, מותרת. ואם הייתה על גבה, שהוא לעומת הצלעות, הרי זו טרפה, שהיא יותר כחסר, והוא שתהיה כמו עלה של הדס, אבל פחות מזה אינה אוזן מותרת. If the number of lobes in the lung were added, right? So we have extra lobes in the lung. If the extra lobe was on the sides of the lobes, or if it were in front of the lung, which is towards the heart, then this is permitted. Okay. Hold on a second. I'll show you a picture. This picture, so you can understand the directions that Rabbeinu is describing here is if you imagine the cow standing on its four legs as like normal while it's alive, and then we took a camera and went from the anus and inwards. Okay, we removed in this picture. We already removed the intestines. We removed the stomachs. We removed the kidneys and so on and so forth. As no, the kidneys are here, but we removed the stomachs. We removed all the other things that are there. We removed the liver. And then all that is in the abdominal cavity. And then the diaphragm, which is this white sheet that we see over here that has some blood because of the liver that was torn out. So this diaphragm, which separates the abdominal cavity, which contains the stomachs, the liver, the kidneys, etc. It separates that from the thoracic cavity, which contains the lung and the heart. So here you can see the lung behind the diaphragm. Right here, two cuts were made into the diaphragm. Through these cuts, the butcher would insert his hand in order to check for any sirchot, to check for any adhesions that through that he can tell if the animal is kosher or not. Right, so he would do his initial check like that. So here you can see that right that and above, if you go up, that you can see here the chest wall, right, the rib cage, and down would be the heart towards the chest of the animal. Okay, so if the so we see that that downwards, right, right on the ventral side towards the chest, that is the heart, right? If the extra lobe is there, then it is kasher. If the extra lobe, however, is dorsal, meaning it's up towards the back of the animal and facing the chest wall, then it would be a terefa. Right? So let's see that again inside. If the extra lobe was on the sides, meaning on the lateral or medial sides of the lung, where the other lobes are, or if it were in front of the lung, which is towards the heart, which is also towards the chest of the animal, right, the ventral side downwards, then this is permitted. But if it were on its back, right, which is permitted because this is also normal, because that's where the intermediate or accessory lobe normally would exist, right? It's normal for the lobe to have for the lung to have an accessory lobe on that side of it. It's not normal for it to have another lobe on top of it, on the back of it towards the back of the animal. Right. So if the extra lobe was on its back, which is towards the ribs, then this is a terefa, because any addition is considered also to be like a subtraction. Right. So if we have an extra piece of the organ, this is equivalent to it missing that organ. And this is so long as this additional lobe is the size of a leaf of the myrtle of a myrtle tree, a myrtle branch. Right? Think of the hadassim that we use in the lulav on Sukkot. Right? So one of those leaves, right? If the lobe has to be a minimum of that size. But if it is less than that size, then it's not considered to be a lobe, so it's not an addition, and then the animal is permitted. אוזן שנמצאת דבוקה בחבירתה הסמוכה לה מותרת, ואם נסמכו שלא על הסדר, כגון שנסמכה ראשונה לשלישית, טרפה. Okay, a lobe that has an adhesion that causes it to stick to one of the other lobes, right? We spoke in the previous chapter about adhesions uh, that can make the animal be considered a terefa. And there when we spoke about adhesions there were always adhesions that caused the lung to stick to the rib cage, right, to the chest wall of the animal. Um, they were not adhesions that caused the lung to stick to itself. Right? So now we'll be talking about adhesions that from where the lung is sticking to itself from one lobe to the other. Right. So if there was an adhesion that stuck from one lobe to a lobe that was next to it, right? So, for example, from the the second lobe, right, the caudal part of the cranial lobe to the middle lobe in the right lung, or from cranial part of the cranial lobe to the caudal part of the cranial lobe, right, the two parts of the cranial lobe, the two top parts, right? So one that's next to the other, then this is permitted. But if the adhesion was not on two lobes that were one after the other, but rather from the upper lobe, from the cranial part of the cranial lobe, right, the top one, the right lung, to the middle lobe, right, to the the third lobe, right. So it skipped one lobe. Then, right, this is the first to the third, and this would be terefa. הלכה ו' נמצאו שתי האונות כאונה אחת, ואינן נראות כשתיים דבוקות, אם היה ביניהן כמו עלה של הדס, בין בעיקרן, בין באמצען, בין בסופן, כדי שיוכר שהן שתיים דבוקות, מותרת, ואם לאו, הרי זו חסרה וטרפה. If there we found two lobes that seemed to look like one lobe, right, that they were so stuck that it looked as if it was just one lobe, and you couldn't tell that it was two lobes. Then, if you see between them a fissure, right, like a crevice that is even as small as the length of a leaf of the hadass, of the myrtle branch, right? The same way, the same leaf that we spoke about in the last halakha, right? But now in terms of the length, right? If it had a fissure or a crevice that was that long, whether that fissure was or that crevice was at the root of the separation of the lobes, right, towards the body of the lung, or if it were even uh, in the middle of the lobes, such that the lobes were connected on top and on the bottom, but in the middle they were separated, or at the end, which is how it normally is, right, such that it makes it recognizable that these are two separate lobes that are simply that there are adhesions, they're stuck one to the other, then it is permitted. But if not, right, if you cannot tell that there is a separation, you cannot tell the difference between them, then it is as if one of them is missing, and it is considered a terefa. הלכה ז' נמצאת כולה שתי ערוגות ואין לה חיתוך אוזניים, טרפה. If the whole lung were found to be like two pieces, two rows, right? We spoke that there is the right lung and the left lung, so it still has a right lung and the left lung, but it has no divisions between any of the lobes. This is a terefa. You can see that, for example, in this picture over here on the left. And so here you have two lungs, and there are no divisions between the various lobes. This is such a lobe that is a terefa, since none of the lobes are separated. וכן, אם חסר גוף הריאה, אף על פי שלא נקרבה, הרי זה כמי שחסר מניין האונות וטרפה. And so too, if the body of the lung were missing some of its itself. Even though there is no puncture, this is as if it were missing part of the numbering of the lobes, and it is considered to be a terefa. Therefore, לפיכך, אם נמצא ממנה מקום יבש עד שיתברך בציפורן, הרי זה כחסר וטרפה, ואפילו היה כלשהו. Therefore, even if we find that on the lung there is a part of it that is dry, such that if you were to go with your fingernail, it would fall apart, this is considered to be like a lung that is missing one of its lobes, because it's missing a part of its body, and is considered a terefa. And even if this is only just in a little bit of the lung. הלכה ח' ריאה שנמצאת נפוחה כמו עיקר חריות של רגל, אוסרין אותה מספק, שזו תוספת משונה ברופה, ושמא התוספת בגוף כחסרון, כמו שאמרו במניין. A lung that was found to be already fully blown, right, which is normally it's not blown, and you need to blow into it in order for it to blow up, right? And right. So if it were already fully blown, like the root of the branches of the palm tree, right? So here, the palm tree has the palm branches, right? If you think of already a fully grown palm tree, then it has the palm branches where the leaves of the palm have already spread out, right? And that gives it its nice look. But before the leaves spread out, the branch is more like a spear, in the way that it is in our lulavim, right? That's how a lulav, we come to have our lulavim. A lulav is simply a palm branch where the leaves have not yet spread out from the stem, or from the stem of the branch, right? So, and in the palm tree, you have the bottom root from which the stems come out, right? And that root is this hard, like circular piece, right? That is already like a full piece, right? So if the lung were like that root from which the branches of the palm are coming out, right? So it was already blown up and was already hard like that. Then we prohibit it out of doubt, because this is a very strange addition in the body of the lung, right? Because normally the lung is not hard and already fully blown up in the inside like this. So we suspect that this addition in the body of the lung is like a subtraction, like we said regarding the count of the lobes of the lung. הלכה ט' הבהמה שפחדה ויראה עד שסמכה הריאה שלה וקרבה להיות יבשה, אם פחדה בידי שמיים כגון ששמעה קול רעם או רעת זיקים וכיוצא בזה, מותרת. אם פחדה בידי אדם כגון ששחטו לפניה בהמה אחרת וכיוצא בזה, הרי זו כחסרה וטרפה. An animal that was afraid until its lung had dried out and right, and it was almost fully dry, then then it depends. If the animal was afraid because of some natural event, right, something that happened by the hand of God, right, some natural event, such as it heard thunder, or it saw lightning, or something like this, from which it received an extreme shock, such that its lung was damaged, this is permitted. But if it if its fear was caused by man, for example, such as if a person slaughtered another animal in front of this animal, or something like that, and when the animal saw the other one being slaughtered in front of it, it got so shocked because it was afraid of being slaughtered next. Then this and its lung was damaged, as we described. Then this is considered as if its lung, if it is missing, and is considered a terefa. His condition is uh, well known in meat industry, is called dark, firm, and dry meat, or DFD meat, um, that which is caused by this extreme stress or exercise of the stress that it gets by the shock of seeing another animal being slaughtered, uh, which happens not infrequently. Um, right, and when this happens, the meat of the animal right becomes dry like this, right, uh, because of the stress that the animal uses, ends up makes him use many of the glycogen reserves that he has, that he has there, which normally after being slaughtered, those same glycogens are used to produce lactic acid, which is a part of what makes the meat more uh, more red and more and not as dry. And because there's less of that lactic acid because of this stress that he felt right before the slaughter, the meat ends up having this effect, and usually is not is meat that is less likely to be sold in the modern meat industry because it is of lesser quality. Achayot. Okay, so we saw that if this is caused by natural causes, then it is permitted, though. If it's caused by man, then it is not permitted. So, how do we check to know what caused it? כיצד בודקים אותה? מושיבין את הריאה במים מעת לעת. אם היה זמן הקור, מושיבין אותה במים פושרין, ובכלי שאין המים מתמסין מגבו ונוזלין, כדי שלא ייסונו במהרה. ואם היה זמן החום, מושיבין אותה במים סונן, ובכלי שהמים מתמסין מגבו, כדי שיישארו קרים. אם חזרה לברייתה, הרי זו בידי שמיים ומותרת, ואם לא חזרה, בידי אדם היא וטרפה. Okay, so how do we check to know the difference? We take the lung and we place it in water for a period of 24 hours. If it were during the winter and it was cold outside, then we put it in lukewarm water in a utensil on which the water doesn't drizzle from the sides of the utensil, and doesn't drip, so that the water won't cool down very quickly. So it will remain lukewarm. And if it were during the summer when it was very hot outside, then we put it in cold water and in a utensil where the water does drip along the sides, so that the water remains cold. We put the lung in that water. If the lung returns to its original condition, meaning to the look that it should have had originally, then we say that this was done by natural hands, right? That the fear that the animal experienced, the shock that he experienced, was caused by natural causes, and therefore is permitted. If it does not return to its original uh, situation, then we say that it was caused by man and is a terefa. The reason I think that this check, what it is checking and how it works is that usually if it is caused by man, then it is caused in this way, in the same way that Rabbeinu just described. It's a situation where the animal saw it slaughtering another animal right in front of it, right in front of it. And normally, in such a case, that same animal that just received a shock is next to be slaughtered. In fact, that's the reason that he was in shock, because he understood that. And usually, so in that case, because the animal just received the shock and is then slaughtered, it is more likely that that this situation where it will not be able to return to its original situation, that will be caused. However, if the shock was caused by natural causes such as lightning or thunder or something like this, then usually the animal has a significant amount of time to de-stress, which might allow it to kind of reheal, and this check might therefore be efficient regarding it. Okay. With that, we conclude the laws regarding the lungs, and now we will go to a the terefot of when one of the legs are missing. הלכה י"א בהמה שהייתה חסרה רגל מתחילת ברייתה, טרפה. An animal that was missing one of its back legs from the beginning of its birth is a terefa. וכן אם הייתה יתרה רגל שכל היתר כחסר הוא. And so too if it had an additional leg, right? If it had 3 legs in the back, because anything that is additional is considered as if it has also is considered like a subtraction, as we have already seen. אבל אם היו לה 3 ידיים או יד אחת מותרת. לפיכך אם נחתך היד שלה מותרת. But if it had 3 hands, right, and as we saw in the earlier chapters regarding the animals, the 2 front limbs are considered yadayim, and the 2 back legs are considered raglayim, right? So it's not exactly as we say in English when we talk of the animal's legs, we mean all 4 legs. Here, not all of them are called legs, only the back 2 legs are called legs, right? So if and the front 2 are not included within this law of hisaron, of a subtracted leg. So if there were 3 hands, or 3 of the front limbs, or only 1 of the front limbs, right, if it were born like that, then it is permitted. And then so too, therefore, if even one of the front limbs was cut off, it is also still permitted. نحتاج الرجل منها أركبة والمعلى ترفة منها أركبة والمطة مترث באיזו أركبة أمרו באركبة שהיא סוף הירך הסמוך לגוף. Okay. Here also I'll give just a short introduction to show what it looks like. Okay, this is these are the hind legs of the cow. We've already spoken about some parts of the leg. I'll just go over the main joints and bones here, so you can understand what Rabbeinu was talking about. The top joint over here is called the hip joint, which we have already seen in a previous halakha, in a previous chapter. Right, the hip joint. From the hip joint comes out the femur, which is the top bone here, which is called the yarech in Hebrew. This connects to the stifle joint, which is over here. The stifle joint is comparable to our knee, right? So the hip joint is compared to both our hip. The stifle joint in the animal is comparable to our knee. From here there's a few bones, but the main bone here is the tibia. The tibia comes out from the stifle joint, and then the tibia ends at the tarsal joint, or also known as the hock joint, which is comparable to our ankle. And then under the tarsal joint or the hock joint is the tarsal and then the metatarsal bones, which will then connect to the feet and so on and so forth. Okay, we'll get to that in a bit. Okay, so we said, okay, so if the leg of the animal is cut, so then if it's from the arkuba means joint. If it's from the joint and upwards, there's a terefa. If it is from the joint and downwards, it is permitted. Which joint are we talking about, right? We're talking about the joint which is at the end of the femur that is closest to the body, right? So again, right? So here's the femur. We're talking about this joint that is at the end of the femur and closest to the body. Closest to the body because, because as you can see in this picture, right, this is where the stifle joint is, right? That's the joint that we're talking about, the stifle joint, right? So the stifle joint is closest to the end, to the bottom, or to the chest of the animal, right? To his the bottom of his body, right? And that's what Rabbeinu is referring to here. Okay, so if the cut is above that joint, then it is a terifa. If the cut is below the stifle joint, it is permitted. نخيض بيت نشبار העצם למעלה מן הארכובה אם יעשה כולו או רובו לחוס הרי זה כמי שנחתך ונפל וטרפה ואם היה הבשר או העור חופר רוב עוביו ורוב היקפו של העצם שנשבר הרי זו מותרת ואפילו נפל מקצת העצם שנשבר והלך לו ורידים הרכים אינן חשובים כבשר. If the bone that is above the stifle joint, right? So, right, if this bone were fractured, right, and right, this is referring to the femur, right, the bone that is above the stifle joint. So if most of it, sorry, 1 second. Sorry, I apologize. The stifle joint. Yes, yeah. No, what I said was correct. I apologize. Yeah. So if that bone is broken, if all of it or a majority of it exits to the outside, it is like someone who his leg was cut and he fell, and this is considered like a terefa. Okay. But if the flesh or the skin of the animal covered the majority of the thickness of the bone, or and the circumference of the bone that was fractured, then this is permitted. And even if some of it fell out, right, some of the bone fell out, right, and was fractured and was destroyed, right? See what Rabbeinu means by this picture on the bottom here, right? So here, for example, the bone is fractured; it is breaking through the skin, so you can kind of see some of the bone, right? But the majority of it is still covered by the skin and the flesh, so this would be permitted. The word gid in rabbinic Hebrew can refer to any of the arteries, veins, ligaments, or tendon. Um, they have only one word for all of these things, and they don't differentiate between them. Um, Here, by Rabbeinu specifies and says Gidim Rakim. And by Gidim Rakim, he means only the arteries and the veins, which are weaker than ligaments and tendons. Uh, as we'll see in the next halakha, there he says Gidim Kashim. And those, in the next halakha, he's referring to tendons, but those can be either tendons or ligaments. Ligaments being the tissue that connects bone to bone, and tendons being the tissue that connect bone to muscle. Here he's referring to the arteries and the veins in this part of the leg. That they are not considered to be like flesh, right? So when we say that the majority of that the skin or flesh needs to cover a majority of the thickness of the bone that was been fractured and its circumference, the veins are not included as something that is covering it. הלכה י"ג צומת הגידין הן בבהמה ובחיה למעלה מן העקב במקום שתולים בו הטבחים הבהמה והן שלושה גידים לבנים אחד עבה ושניים דקים וממקום שיתחילו והן קשים ולבנים עד שיסור הלובן מהן ויתחילו להתאדם ולהתרכך, זוהי צומת הגידין, והיא כאורך 16 אצבעות בשור. The Somet HaGidin, which is referring to the Achilles tendon of the animal. I'll go into that a little bit in a second. The Somet HaGidin, both in the behemah, the domesticated animal, and in the wild animal, is above the ankle, or as I said, the hock joint of the animal. Right here, you can see the same picture that we said earlier. So here is the tarsal joint or the hock joint, right? And the somet hagidin are right above that joint. They are above that joint in the place the place that's where the butchers normally hang the animal from. And they are composed of three white tendons, one of which is thick and two of which are thin. Okay. Here, I'm going to also bring up this picture. Okay, so here we can see the leg of the animal. Okay, here this bone is the tibia. Okay, we have up here the stifle joint, right? And over here is the tarsal joint or the hock joint. Okay, and now here on the right, we can see here three pieces of tendon. One is here, this white, this outer, on the outer end of the picture here. A second piece is over here, this that connects up to this bigger piece of muscle, right, over here. And then in between them, or what looks as if it's in between them, is over here. In reality, it's not in between them. It is, think of this three-dimensionally, it's really on the other side of them, right? It's deeper in. It's on the other side of the leg, right? But it's like behind them, right? And that is the third tendon. These are the three tendons that the Rabbeinu was referring to. Now, the three tendons are called the superficial flexor tendon, which the superficial flexor tendon is this outer tendon. Okay. This tendon on the left is called the tarsal tendons, both of the biceps and of the semitendinosus. Okay, that's this tendon over here, and then the tendon that is farther in on the other side is called the gastrocnemius tendon. Okay, the gastrocnemius tendon is thicker, is the thick tendon, right? Rabbeinu just said that there is one tendon which is thick and two which are thin. This one is the thick tendon, and these two that we can see here are the thinner tendons. You can see them also in this picture. This is a zoom in of the uh, of the uh, of the joint, of the hock joint. Okay, so here too, this outer tendon is what we said was the superficial flexor tendon. This small uh, band that comes out here is the tarsal tendons, right? And then behind them, you can also see is the gastrocnemius tendon. Here on the left picture, it is a picture that's taken from the other side. So here you can see that the gastrocnemius tendon well, and the other two behind it, right? So here, this tendon over here is the gastrocnemius tendon. And you can see that it's thicker than these two, okay? You can also see that they're white, as Albenu describes. And sorry, and here is the pictures of the bones, right? That the tendons are, right, because the tendons are connecting bone to muscle. So it's this bone, which is called the calcaneus bone, which is like the heel, right, the heel of the ankle, right? They're connecting that bone together with the muscles farther up, which are the gastrocnemius muscle, also called the calf, the soleus muscle, the semitendinosus muscle, and the biceps, and some other muscles up there. Okay, these three, these three tendons together are called, in Hebrew, the somet hagidin. In English, we call them the common calcaneal tendon, uh, which is also known as the Achilles tendon. And so the Achilles tendon, or the common calcaneal tendon, are composed of these three tendons together. Okay. Right, so they are the three white tendons, one of which is thick and two of which are thin. And from the place that they begin, where they are hard and white, right? That's the place that I just showed you, until the place where the whiteness of them starts to disappear and they begin to become red and soft, right? And this is the place where they meet the muscles, right? Because as we said, they connect with the bone and meet and connect them to the muscles, right? Or connect the muscles to the bone, right? So they'll meet the muscles, right? So the place where they start to become red and soft, right? The place where the muscle begins, that area is called somatogedin, right? From the red until the muscle, until the bone. And the length of this is about 16 fingers length in the ox, right? Which, according to the Makabili edition, is about 32 centimeters. Okay. הלכה י"ד ומניין גידים אלו בעוף 16 גידים תחילתן מן העיניו של למטה מאצבע יתרה עד סוף הרגל שהוא קשקשים. Okay, and the number of these tendons in the bird are 16 tendons, right? So as opposed to the 3 in the animal, we have 16 in the bird. And they begin from the einav that is under the extra toe of the bird. So here the bird, I didn't bring a picture of this, but the bird has three toes at the end of its foot. You can see them in this picture over here, which in the McBeaty version, right? They have as three fingers, and then that are facing forwards, and it has another toe that is facing backwards. And this extra toe is called the Etzba Yetera. Now, above that, there is another piece that is like a little bump, which you can see in the male chicken. In the female, it's a little bit less pronounced, so you don't recognize it as much. And there, let me see. Let me see. Yeah. So here, right here, you can see this extra piece, right? Picture is a little cut off, so you can't see it all the way, right? And then above that, you have a bunch of tendons, right? And then over here, you have the ankle, or right, the hock joint, right? Just like our ankle, right? And then upwards is what we all know as the drumstick, right? That's the part that's above the hock joint, right? We don't normally eat the part that is the foot of the chicken, right? And so, sorry. So from the beginning of that piece that's above the sorry, that's from this little enav. Enav means like a grape, right? From this little bump that is under the extra toe until the end of the leg, where it has all of its webs. Over there, it has 16 tendons. And you can see that in this picture as well, where here you can see all of the various tendons. When it's broken, this is right where the drumstick of the chicken is. Okay. نخدت ט"ו. בהמה שנחתכו רגליה במקום צומת הגידין, טרפה. An animal which its leg was cut at the place of the summit of Agidin, at the place of the Achilles tendon of the animal, is a terefa. Okay. ואל תתמח ותאמר, כיצד תחתך למעלה מצומת הגידין, והיא מותרת, עד שתחתך למעלה מן הארכובה העליונה, כמו שביארנו, ואם תחתך למטה בצומת הגידין, אסורה. שבטרפות תחתך מכאן ותחיה, מכאן ותמות. ולא נאסרה בהמה זו מפני שהיא חתוכת רגל ממקום זה, אלא מפני שנחתכו הגידים, שחתיכתן מקלה לטרפות, כמו שהתבאר. Okay, do not be wondrous, right? Don't say, how is this possible, right? Don't have it wondrous in front of you. That how is it possible that if, right, because we said if it is cut, right? How is it possible that if the leg is cut above the Achilles tendon, then it is permitted until if you cut it from above the stifle joint, right? Because as we have already explained, that if you cut it above the stifle joint, it is permitted, right? And then if you cut it from the stifle joint to the Achilles tendon, it is, I'm sorry, if you cut it above the stifle joint, it is prohibited. If you cut it from the stifle joint to the Achilles tendon, it is permitted. And then if you cut it from the Achilles tendon, in the part of the Achilles tendon, then it again is prohibited. Right? So it seems very strange. Because how could it be? Because you have a part that's prohibited, then a part that's permitted, and then a part that's prohibited. And you would think that just if the leg is cut off, then it's a terefa. And if the leg isn't cut, then it's not a terefa. So why does it matter at what point in the leg is it cut off? Regardless, the leg is cut off. So Rabbeinu responds to this question and says that regarding terefot, it is possible for it to be cut here and for it to live, or for it to be cut here and for it to die. Right? Right. What will cause it to die is not the fact that its leg is cut. Depending on where its leg is cut, it might live and it might die. And the animal did not become prohibited because its leg is cut, right? That's not the terefa that we're talking about here, right? Because the leg is cut in this place. Rather, the reason that it is a terefa is because its tendons were cut, and that the cutting of them is what makes it, what includes them in the terefot, as we will explain, right? So, right. So this whole question of why does it matter in what part of the leg is cut, Rabbeinu says is not a good question to ask, because it is not because of the cutting the leg that it becomes terefa, rather because the tendons are cut that they are terefa. And in this area where it is permitted, there are no tendons. Rather, there is only muscle. Muscle and bone. Zayin. With that, we have completed the halachot regarding the terefa of hasera. And now we will begin with netula. And hasera being that one of the organs was missing, and netula being one of that it was taken. netula kesad. שלושה איברים הן שאם ניטלו טרפה, ואף על פי שאין בהן לא דין נקב ולא דין חסרון, ואלו הם סומך הגידים והכבד ולחי העליון. There are three, the removing, how do we define the removing of an organ? There are three organs that if they are removed, they are a terefa. And even though none of them has any laws regarding if they are punctured or if they are missing, right? Still, if they are removed, they are terefa. And these are they: the Achilles tendon, the liver, and the upper jaw. הלכה יוד זין. וכבר ביארנו שהבהמה שנחתך רגלה וכן העוף במקום סומך הגידים לא נעשו טרפה אלא מפני שנחתכו הגידים. לפיכך, אם נחתכו הגידים לבדם והרגל קיימת, טרפה, שהרי נטפלה סומך הגידים. We have already explained that the animal its leg has been cut, and so too a bird who's been cut in the place of the Achilles tendon. They only became a terefa because their tendons were cut. Therefore, if the tendons were cut and the leg remains, right, meaning the bone and the whole muscle and everything of the leg stays intact, and it's only the tendons that were cut, then it is a terefa, since the Achilles tendon was removed. הלכה י"ח. נחתך בבהמה האחד העבה לבדו, מותרת, שהרי נשארו השיניים הדקים. If in the behemah, this is so too in the bird, if in the animal, only the thick tendon, right, meaning only the gastrocnemius tendon was cut, then this is permitted, since the two thin tendons remain, right? Even though the gastrocnemius tendon is a majority of the tendon in terms of the amount of tissue that there is, since it's not a majority in the number of tendons that there are, since it's only 1 out of 3, it is still permitted. נחתכו השיניים הדקים מותרת, שהרי האחד העבה גדול משניהם, והרי לא נטלה כל הסומה, אלא מיעוטה. If the two thin ones, right, were cut, right? So if the superficial flexor tendon and the tarsal tendons were cut, but the gastrocnemius tendon still remained, then it is also permitted, since the one that is the thickest, right, the gastrocnemius tendon, is larger than the other two, such that the not the such that it wasn't the case that the entire Achilles tendon was removed, right? And by the entire, Rabbeinu here means even a majority, right? That even a majority of this area wasn't removed, rather just a minority of it. נחתך רובו של לכל אחד מהם טרפה. But if a majority of all three of them were cut, such that in this case you have both a majority of uh, the total amount of tissue, as well as 3 out of 3, right? So a majority of the number of tendons, then it is a terefa. ואין צריך לומר שנחתכו כולן או נטלו כולן. We don't even have to say that if all of them were cut or if all of them were removed, right? So the point here is that you need both a majority of the total amount of tissue and also a majority of the number of the tendons, right? Such that I think that even if the gastrocnemius tendon were cut and one of the other thin ones were cut, but not the other one, then this would also be a case of terefa, even though Rabbeinu doesn't say that explicitly. הלכה י"ט ובעוף אפילו נחתך רובו של אחד מן ה16 טרפה. Regarding the bird, even if a majority of just one of the 16 were cut, it is considered a terefa. הלכה כ' ועוף שנשתברו גפיו מותר כבהמה שנחתכו ידיה. A bird whose wings were broken is permitted, just like an animal whose frontal limbs were cut, right? So the broken wings in the bird do not make it a terefa. הלכה כ"א כבד שנטלה כולה טרפה, ואם נשתייר ממנה כזית במקום שהיא תלויה בו, וכזית במקום מרה, הרי זו מותרת. נדלדלה הכבד, והרי היא מעורה בתרפש שלה, מותרת. נטל ממנה מקום שהיא תלויה בו, ומקום מרה, אף על פי שהשאר קיים כמות שהוא, טרפה. Okay. So here just another picture. Okay, so this is a picture of just like the picture that we saw earlier, as if we were going in from the anus of the animal, right? This was the picture that we saw earlier. So here we had already removed the intestines, the stomachs, and the liver, and all we remained with was the kidneys in the abdominal cavity, and we had cut a part of the diaphragm so that we can see the lungs. So here in this picture, the diaphragm is still whole. We have not yet opened the sacs of the kidney, and we have not yet removed the liver. Okay, so this picture is the same situation, just that we have not yet opened. So you can see the diaphragm as it is still whole before it is cut open, and the kidneys before they are removed from these sacs, right? So, and here is the liver, okay, this red object. Okay? The liver, as you can see, is stuck. It is on the diaphragm in some parts of it. Okay, as well, we have here the mara, the gallbladder, okay, which we talked about in chapter 6. Okay. Okay, let's read the halacha. Keep this picture in mind where you see the liver stuck to the diaphragm, as an area that the gallbladder is stuck to it, and from there we'll read the halacha. Halacha kaf alef. So a liver that was removed entirely is a terefa. Okay. If a little bit of the liver remained, such that there remained an olive's worth in the place in which it hangs, and an olive's worth in the place of the mara of the gallbladder, uh, this is permitted. Okay. Sorry, 1 second. Okay. Yeah, sorry. Okay, so so we have here two locations that Rabbeinu is referring to. It says, first I'll deal with the second one since that is easier to identify. If there is so if we removed most of the liver, but we left an olive's worth in the place where it connects with the gallbladder. Okay, so the liver has a number of foci. A fossa is a um, shallow depression or a hollow. Okay, like where something can kind of stick with. As a number of these. Here, this is the gallbladder fossa, right? The place where the gallbladder sits in the uh, in the uh, in the liver. As well, we have the makom shehita, which is referring to the inferior vena cava fossa. Okay, the place where the vena cava is sticking to the liver. The vena cava is a what brings the blood right back from the liver to the heart. Okay, we spoke in chapter 6 about uh, the uh, the hepatic artery and the portal vein, the two larger arteries that bring blood to the liver, right? That bring oxygenated blood to the liver, and that bring blood that contains the various nutritions from the digestive or tract of the animal, from the intestines and so on. Right, so those supply the blood to the liver, and then the vena cava brings the blood from the liver back to the heart. And from there, right, and this is what Rabbeinu means when he says the makom shehi teluya bo. Okay, you can see that in the picture. So this is the picture here. I'll show you another picture. So uh, this is the part of the kidney that we were looking at. Sorry, the part of the liver that we were looking at. Okay, here is the gallbladder, and the gallbladder fossa is behind it, which it's covering. Okay, here you can see the opening to the portal vein, and also the red is the artery, right? The hepatic artery. And here on the side, over here, you can see the um, inferior vena cava, which comes into the middle of the liver. Okay, like in the middle here. This side, which is the side that we couldn't see, this is the side that's facing the diaphragm. The one on the right, picture on the right, is the side that's facing the diaphragm. Okay. This is the opening, and this is the same. These are the same pipes. From here, it goes up to the, and from here, it goes up to the lung. Okay. Right. So if just a little bit remains in those two places, then it is permitted. ندلدلها الكبد وراهي معربة تربشلها متهف. If the liver were hanging, right? So the liver is also connected to the diaphragm, right? There is the coronary ligament which connects the liver to the diaphragm. Okay, so if, however, this were removed, right? So you started ripping it off from the diaphragm, but you still left a little bit, right? So it were hanging. So the liver was just hanging, like by a thread, right? By a few pieces, right? So if the liver were hanging, but it is still connected to the diaphragm, the tarpesh hakaved is the diaphragm, then it is permitted. ניטל ממנה מקום שהיא תלויה בו ומקום המרה, אף על פי שהשאר קיים כמות שהוא טרפה. If it were removed, if the part that it right, the inferior vena cava fossa and the gallbladder fossa were both removed, but even though all of the rest of the liver were still there, just as it normally is, this is a terefa, right? Meaning that those two places are the places that dictate whether it is permitted or not. נשאר בה כזית במקום מרה, וכזית במקום שהיא תלויה בו, אבל היה מפוזר מעט בכאן ומעט בכאן, או שהיה מרודד, או שהיה ארוך כרפאה, הרי זו כספק. הרי זה ספק, ויראה לי שהיא אסורה. Okay, if an olive's worth remained in the gallbladder fossa and an olive's worth in the inferior vena cava fossa, but this olive's worth, but all of the rest of the liver, the amount of the liver were separated. There was a little bit here and a little bit here, right? And it wasn't like a whole piece. Or if the liver were merudad, if it were literally diluted, right? I think it means like it were diluted and made like very thin, such that it's like practically the liver, right? It's very thin. Or if it were just like this very long strip, right, that was connecting them, then this is a case of doubt, right? Since we still have an olive's worth in both places, so it's a case of doubt. And Rambam here says that it seems to him that this should be prohibited. I think why he is saying this is because even though there is an olive's worth in each of them, because they're so thin, or because right, it's just this little strap, it's as if they don't really exist at all. And I think that is why he thinks that they are prohibited. Either way, even without Rabbeinu's opinion, since it is a case of doubt, so either way it would be prohibited out of doubt at least, even if not prohibited with certainty. הלכה כ"ג לחי העליון של ניטל טרפה, אבל אם ניטל התחתון כגרון שנרמם עד מקום הסימנים ולא נערכו, הרי זו מותרת. The upper jaw of the animal that was removed, this animal becomes a terefa. But if it were only the lower jaw that were removed, such as if it were kind of torn out all the way until the area of the two of simanim, of the trachea and the esophagus, so long as they haven't been uprooted from their spot, because we saw if they're uprooted, then this makes it prohibited. Then, so long as they're still in their spot, this is permitted, right? It doesn't matter that the lower jaw were removed. It is only the upper jaw that makes it a terefa. הלכה כ"ד. בכל עבר שנאמר בו, אם היה חסר טרפה, כך אם ניטל טרפה. And every organ that we said regarding it, that if it were missing, then it is a terefa, and so too, if it were removed, is a terefa, right? By missing here, Rabbeinu means that it were born without that thing, right? So if so we said if it's missing, it's one of its legs, right? So it was born without one of those legs, that makes it a terefa. And so too, if the leg were cut off or were removed, there was regarding the tendons, right? But as we saw, and that also makes it a terefa. But, אבל, עבר שנאמר בו, אם ניטל טרפה, אינה נאסרת, אלא אם נחתך אותו עבר. אבל אם נבראת חסרה אותו עבר, הרי זו מותרת. But, on the other hand, every organ about which we said that if it were removed, it is a terefa, then it is only prohibited if it were cut, if that same organ were cut off and removed. But if the animal were born without that organ, or if it just was missing that organ from birth, then this is permitted, right? So we see that the case of hasera, of it missing an item, is more stringent than the organs that are prohibited because if they were taken. And so anything that says if it were missing, any of the organs which we said that if it were missing is a terefa, we include both if it's missing and if it were taken. And thereby it is more stringent. But the organs that we said that if it is removed, then we mean only if it were removed, and thereby being more lenient. שאם לא תאמר כן, נמצאת החסרה והנטולה אחת היא. Right, because if we didn't say this regarding the netula, if we didn't say that it is more lenient, and that the netula does not cover the case of if it were born without that same organ, if we didn't say it regarding this, then it ends up being that the hasera and the netula are the same thing, all right, and we wouldn't need both of them. And so this is what distinguishes them. וכל עבר שנאמר בו שאם ניטל מותרת, קל וחומר אם חסר מתחילת ברייתה ולא נברא שהיא מותרת. And so too, any organ which we said regarding it that if it were removed, it is permitted, then all the more so that if it were missing from birth, that it is also permitted, right? Since that is more stringent, then obviously that would also be permitted. Okay. הלכה כ"ה. בהמה שניטלה האום שלה, והיא בית הרחם, או שניטלו הכליות, הרי זו מותרת. לפיכך, אם נבראת בכליה אחת או בשלוש כליות, מותרת. וכן, אם נקבה הכליה, מותרת. An animal whose womb was removed, right, and this womb is the uterus, or if the kidneys were removed, then this is permitted. Therefore, if an animal were born with only one kidney, right, because normally we have two kidneys, right, if it were born with only one kidney or with three kidneys, it is still permitted, right, since because we don't, even if we were to say that yetera kehaser, that if it's missing, or if it added one, it's like it's missing, a missing kidney is not one of the terefot. And so too, if the kidney had a puncture, it is permitted. הלכה כ"ו. אף על פי שהכליה שניטלה או שחסרה מותרת, אם נמצאת קטנה ביותר, והקטינה בדקה עד כפול ובגסה עד כעיניו טרפה. Even though a kidney that if it were removed or if it were missing is permitted, if we find that one of them is extremely small, then it is a terefa. Now, what is this measurement of small that makes it a terefa? So in the thin animal, right, like a sheep or a goat, then the small is like the size of a pool, like a bean, like a fava bean. Regarding in the thick animal, like a cow, then it is until the size of a grape. And that is the minimum size for it to be. If it's that size or smaller, then it is terefa. וכן, אם לקצה הכליה, והוא שיעשה בשרה כבשר המת שהרעיש אחר ימים, שאם תאחז במקצתו יתמסמס ויפול, והגיע חולי זה עד הלובן שבתוך הכליה, הרי זו טרפה. And so too, if the kidney were damaged. What do we mean by damaged? We mean that the flesh of the kidney was made such that it was like dead flesh, that rotted after a couple of days, right? And it looks like it rotted, such that if you were to grab onto it or hold onto a piece of it, it would just it would come apart and just fall apart, right? So that's what we mean by the kidney that was damaged. And this disease that afflicted the kidney reached all the way to the whiteness that is inside the kidney. Now, this is referring. So this is a terefa. This whiteness that we're referring to is are these tubes, right? Inside the kidney, there are these tubes that bring urine from the kidneys to the urinary bladder. Okay, because what does the kidney do? The kidney takes blood and kind of is able to find things that need to be excreted, and also takes out some excess water, and with that forms urine and sends that to the urinary bladder through the ureters in the kidney. And these ureters are what are referred to by the whiteness that is inside the kidney. וכן אם נמצאת בכליה לחה, אף על פי שאינה סירוחה, או שנמצאו בה מים עכורים או סירוחים, הרי זו טרפה, אבל אם נמצאו בה מים זכים, הרי זו מותרת. And so too, if we find in the kidney like mucus, some kind of fluid, even if, any kind of fluid, even if the fluid is not, it doesn't smell bad, or if we find in it water which is like dirty, right? We see that it's like not clear, or that the water smells bad, then this is also a terefa. But if we find in it water that is clear, then it is permitted. And with that, we conclude chapter 8.